Good afternoon, everybody. We're joined for the second time by Steve Fezzik of pregame.com. Steve is widely regarded as the best NFL sports betting tournament player in the world. In perhaps his most notable achievement, Steve won the Las Vegas Hilton Super Contest in back-to-back seasons 2008 and 2009. This contest is widely regarded as this World Series of sports betting, and Steve is the only two-time winner, which is very, very impressive. Welcome, Steve. How are you doing today?
It's my pleasure to be here, and it's in fact Super Contest weekend at the Westgate. So if you've ever been interested in that, you could, if you're close to Las Vegas and you want an excuse to get out here, come out and come on down to the Westgate this Friday and Saturday. I will be there Saturday night.
And you also mentioned just before, why are you going to be there Saturday night?
They are having a rings ceremony, like the World Series of Poker always gave bracelets to the winner of tournaments, main event winners, and they're finally getting around to giving former winners of the Super Contest commemorative rings for having done so. So I will be picking up 2 rings on Saturday night.
So you'll be the only one picking up 2 rings?
Yes.
That's impressive. So congratulations on that. So what else is going on? We got the busy time of year, NFL coming up, so I'm sure you've been talking to a lot of people, been very busy. You excited?
I am very excited. You know, this is an exciting week. Week 3 of the preseason upcoming is really the one week, in my opinion, that you absolutely should pay key attention, especially to the first half of week 3.
Right, you mentioned that. Is that because it's most of the starters playing and people are, I guess this is the biggest game after a few kind of really more games where the 4th and 5th stringers are playing?
Yeah, so what happens is this really is, for most teams, the dress rehearsal. So as long as the team is bringing their A game and they're playing their starters, this is the best half, the first half of week 3, to evaluate, is a team ready to go for the regular season. There always is a concern that one team might have game planned for the other team and the other team did not. However, like the New England Patriots are talking about how, well, we're going to mimic what we do week 1 and during the regular season this week. So we're going to be game planning for our opponent, Carolina. So it's a really good litmus test for our teams ready to go for the regular season.
Yeah, well, that's exciting because the first few weeks, the watching hasn't been that great. But when the guys are playing hard, especially the first string guys, it's a lot more fun to watch. So that'll be good.
Yes, and like week 2, for instance, the Rams played the Raiders in preseason, and because those two teams are playing again Monday Night Football week 1 of the regular season, that was a game I think you could glean no information from because both teams just chose to sit their starters.
Yeah. So the last time you spoke with us, we had a great discussion about the similarities of sports betting and trading. And during the discussion, we touched on live sports betting, and I wanted to follow up on that because you mentioned there was a larger edge in that side of the sports betting, live betting, and so I wanted to follow up what your thoughts are there.
Yeah, and let's talk about why is there a larger edge? Because during live wagering, well, let me start with traditional wagering, the side and the total. You get a virgin line put out there by one sports book, and that's bet into all week long. So all week long, the sharpest minds in the world are betting on both sides of that game, whoever they should like, and hammering in place that line. By the time the game arrives, typically that line is essentially correct. It is a very efficient market. But the second the game kicks off, there's so many new pieces of information that are being put forth that by the first time out, after the first possession, you essentially have to put up a new virgin line on that game. And I really think that is where the market is much, much less efficient, because now you're not playing against the cumulative opinions of the entire betting world. You're really just playing against the opinion of what one odds maker has of what the game line should be based upon the early data on that game.
Right. And so that kind of brings in live betting. I guess when the game's actually happening, like where do you look for the best sort of opportunities? Is it early in the game, late in the game?
Late in the game is unquestionably the best because the value of even a half point spikes through the roof. To give an example, let's say there's a college football game and a team is ahead 40-0. and it's midway through the fourth quarter, and you get two books, and one puts up, and this does happen, one puts up a 47 and one puts up a 47 and a half.
Yeah.
Now, that would be no big deal at all, of course, during the regular season before the game started. But the difference between those two numbers is enormous. And being able to get an under 47 and a half instead of an under 47 is worth probably about 75 cents on the line, because so often the game is going to land exactly 47 points.
Right. And so early in the game, do you see there, obviously it's updating throughout, but there are less big opportunities because there's so much time left in the game? And so is it more of waiting for those lines where it's close to half point that's the best opportunities?
Early in the game, the value of getting a rogue line is not as important, like I discussed about getting a hook like on a 47.5. What's much more important is trying to evaluate, hey, is there something going on in this game that was mispriced in the pre-flop line before the game started, a key injury, or was there a player that was questionable that clearly is 100% or clearly is not close to 100%, and that information was not readily available to the markets before the game started.
Right, and so you can adjust to that information, I guess, with everybody else. How does it also work with, like, for instance, like New England Patriots or something like that, a team that, typically wins and does well? Vegas tends to favor them with lines before, but I guess as the game gets going, does the live betting, I guess, adjust for what's actually out there opposed to more of the mystique before?
Pretty much Vegas just uses their algorithms for whatever the closing number and total is for every game. So the New England Patriots would be the type of team that having intimate knowledge of them assists you in your live wagering. Specifically, I would say the book on New England is unlike a different NFL team that might have a 17-point lead in the fourth quarter. You would look towards the under. I would not do that in any New England game. Belichick understands that no lead is safe, and frankly, no tired defense can stop his offense. He does not run the ball in the fourth quarter. He just absolutely keeps going ahead and looking to score on each and every possession.
Yeah, that's I've seen that way too many times as a Dolphin fan. Many times each year.
Actually, the Dolphins have done quite well in Miami against the Patriots. It's the one divisional road game that, actually the Patriots have struggled at the Jets too. They usually do well in Buffalo, but I always theorize that that's the one trip to Miami Beach, especially later in the year, that the Patriots sometimes don't look like the Patriots.
Yeah. Well, maybe that's the Miami. So to follow up on the live betting, you actually have a website called www.lifetimesportswinner.com, where you kind of go over different opportunities in live sports betting, and you talk about different edges to look for. What's another sort of edge that you could find like on Lifetime Sports Winner regarding live betting?
Yeah, so we really talk about certain aspects that you need to be aware of if you are live wagering. And a lot of these seem to be obvious after I mention them, but they're not so obvious when you're first playing. And I liken live wagering to be similar to almost like the no limit poker craze in the early 2000s, when now it's become kind of commonplace that if you have a big draw where you flop a pair and a flush draw, for instance, and someone bets into you and you don't have a whole lot of chips in front of you, you can shove a lot of times and just go all in, and maybe you've got a big draw and maybe you flopped a set, and your opponent just does not know. And that strategy is very commonplace now, but 15 years ago, not a lot of people were doing it. And so because live wagering is so new, I talk about certain things that you need to be aware of. And, one of them is in football wagering outside, if there's a wind, if there's a prevalent wind, you need to know who's getting the tailwind or the headwind in the second and fourth quarters, because you will sometimes see with a significant wind that a team's going into the wind the whole first quarter. And of course they look terrible because they just can't throw down the field. That would be the type of topics that we discuss in these CDs in depth to be aware of as you're live wagering.
Oh, that's great. And you can see that at lifetimesportswinner.com. What about, well, you just mentioned the wind. What do you find is more important leading up to the game, within an hour of the game? Is it heavy rain, winds, snow? What tends to affect an over/under or a game more, out of those kind of conditions that are unforeseen earlier in the week?
Moderate snow has almost no impact. Rain actually has more of an impact. It's harder to throw the ball in the rain than in the snow. The wind is the most significant impact, but you add rain and wind together, and it certainly absolutely has a larger impact on totals than you would expect. One of the things we discussed in Lifetime Sports Winner is that a grass field does not hold up as well in precipitation versus a artificial turf field. So if you do get heavy rain on a grass field, that oftentimes can turn that field into a literal bog where under becomes a really, really strong wager. But I'd go as far as to say I don't think I've ever played an over in heavy rain in any game other than a game where I'd already blasted the under maybe at 8 points, a higher total, and I'm just playing back some on the over, playing for a partial middle.
So high wind and rain on a grass field is typically a good under. You'll see that line start to move in if the weather is looking to be very bad.
Yeah, even better if I can get the wind to be going across the field instead of a head and a tailwind. That would be the optimal situation for a game to wind up being an under. And, it's not unusual that we get a hurricane blasting through the Caribbean that comes up the eastern seaboard. Well, we'll get like 1 week a year where there's about 15 games impacted, and you'll see a total drop from a 61 in college football down to as low as like a 48. I think it was the last few years, that has certainly happened with hurricanes blowing through.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So let's talk about a few things. You mentioned, you can find all of Steve's picks on pregame.com. And, I spoke with Steve earlier in the week, and he gave me some ideas that he's looking at. And so it's interesting. A few of these lines have changed. And so I'll let Steve kind of talk about a few different things that he likes. Actually, let's start with the last time we spoke, you talked about you still like the Colts as a season win over 7.5?
Yeah, well, when we spoke, it was 7. I personally played it over 6 and over 6.5. It's a bet I've been recommending to my clients all year long. And I've kind of gone from the buy sign to the neutral sign on the Colts because I haven't really liked what I've seen from Andrew Luck. I haven't disliked it, but he hasn't thrown the ball down the field at all. He's been very conservative. I'm happy that he's out there and getting the playing time. And the price on the Colts, as I projected, just the mere fact that he was playing has gone up considerably. So now you're looking at if you're playing the Colts over 7 wins, it's minus 150 that you have to lay. Just a couple weeks ago, you could have gotten the Colts over 7 minus $1.10. So think about that. Your $110 investment now costs you $150, not nearly as attractive.
Okay, so that's interesting. And then you mentioned the Raiders, that they're right now at 8.5 as their win total, and you like that as an under.
Yes, and the Raiders, unfortunately, 8.5 is no longer available. 8 is the prevalent number. The Raiders are the classic poster child of the team you want to fade. They're a sexy team with Gruden coming in. They've got a much better offense than defense. They've got distractions with their best defensive player, Mack, not being able to play. And because of that, you've got a situation where you want to go ahead and fade the Raiders and play them under 8 wins.
And what about, is it the idea also there's a bit of a hype with Gruden and the move to Vegas and embedded in that?
Similar to the Vegas Golden Knights were hyped beyond belief, and they ultimately so overachieved that hype benefited the bettors that were betting on the Golden Knights. But just because they're relocating to Las Vegas, there's a huge fan base here, a loyal fan base already that is backing the Raiders with their dollars. And you love it when the public is playing on one thing and you like the opposite side.
Yeah, absolutely. And then you had a few picks that you were looking at, and tell me about how the line has changed. But earlier in the week, and I have it up here, you were talking about Cleveland over Philadelphia and Oakland over Green Bay in the preseason Week 3 picks.
Yeah, so I played Cleveland -2 and -2.5 in the game tonight, and I thought it was like one of the best bets of the year in preseason because Philly is down Wentz, their starting quarterback, and I did not think that the Super Bowl MVP Foles was going to play because he had a shoulder sprain. Well, it turns out Foles is playing. So what happened with that spread is it went up to as high as 4, and then it got announced that Foles is actually playing for Philly, and it's leaked back down to 3.5. So a bet that I thought was going to be just phenomenally good on the Browns. Now it's acceptable. I think it's a much more important game for Cleveland, and I'm sure we're going to see 3/4 of probably Nate Sudfeld for Philly, but it would have been a lot better if Foles had not played at all.
Interesting. And then what about Oakland over Green Bay?
Yeah, so I don't think Aaron Rodgers is going to play for Green Bay here. So Oakland mailed in Week 2. Gruden did not play any of his starters. By all reports, they're treating this as a critically important game that they're trying to win. That line opened Oakland -2.5, and I got in -2.5. Great bet. Line goes all the way up to 7, and now there's been some money back on Green Bay simply because their backup quarterbacks are good. And in the NFL preseason, it is so hard to hold on to a 7 or more point lead that it's been profitable historically just to take 7 or more points in any preseason game if it's offered.
Interesting. So Aaron Rodgers, I haven't seen the update. Is he not playing because of injury or just because it's preseason?
It's just because it's preseason, and even if he plays, he'll only play, one series. That teams more and more have become paranoid, especially when they have a quarterback like an Aaron Rodgers that has had significant injuries in prior seasons, and he's had 2 broken collarbones. There's no reason really for him to get out there anymore until the real season starts.
Yeah, absolutely. I had a question for you. I've been watching some preseason, and this new helmet rule is creating a lot of flags. A lot of routine tackles are creating 15-yard first down penalties. Do you think that this is going to impact the over/under to basically create more points? Because let's say a routine first or second and 10 play that results in a 3-yard completion, so it's now 3rd and 7, is actually going for an automatic first down and 15 yards down the field.
Absolutely. So year to date, there's been 1.5 of these flags per game. I think there was 51 of these penalties called. They're all getting called against the defense. I saw a Jet running back lower his head and barrel into the end zone, and he actually came out of it with a mild he had to have a concussion test, and there was no flag on him. The letter of the law says if you lower your helmet to initiate contact, even no matter where the contact is, you're going to get flagged for it. And it's becoming very difficult to just play defense in the NFL. So there'll be 2 factors. More flags is the obvious impact, but the ancillary impact is that the defenders have to be less aggressive in their tackling. Right. Now they have to be more careful. They're out of their comfort zone. I would project that scoring will increase in the NFL 2 points per year because of this rule. However, I think that there is a good chance that wink, wink, nod, nod, the word will get out to the refs. Hey, we're getting such a backlash from our fans. We need to not call these questionable penalties. They're calling too many of them right now, in my opinion, in the preseason, to the point that on a weekly basis, we're getting a textbook tackle being flagged for a personal foul, and it's very bad PR for the NFL. But remember, the NFL is scared to death about the repercussions of all the head injuries that have occurred through the years. So the pendulum has swung to the point they want to be very, very careful. And now they can say legally, hey, look at this rule. We're doing everything we can to make the game safer.
Yeah, well, it's, just from a viewing standpoint, it's dangerous because, all of a sudden we got a routine play, a routine nice pass, button hook goes for a first down onto the next play. Now it's a flag comes out, 15-yard penalty. And like you said, also, let's say your running back goes into the end zone, seems like a routine touchdown, and they call him for a 15-yard penalty for lowering his helmet. That's it's going to be interesting to see how everything adjusts to that and the fan backlash, like you said.
I think the NFL, though, the light bulb may have gone on with their when they are watching the popularity of the NBA, because the NBA changed their rules a few years back where you couldn't hand check, and they basically they allow players to selectively travel and they don't call it, and it increases scoring. And that has made the league so much more popular. Fans, the recreational fan, likes to see higher scoring games. And because of that, I think if the NFL sees a spike in scoring and they see some of their popularity return, the ratings were way down last year, that's going to encourage them to absolutely make this a point of emphasis throughout the year and be calling these penalties. In an ideal world, the NFL would love that none of these defenders use their helmets ever. There's fewer injuries and there's more offense.
Yeah. Any thoughts, somebody's asking, any thoughts on Adrian Peterson to the Redskins, and I guess on the entire NFC East on that, how the Redskins are looking this year?
Yeah, well, it's a major concern because the Redskins got the steal of the draft in the second round, Darius Geis out of LSU. He was projected to be the third most likely rookie of the year candidate, even though he was the second rounder because he had first round talent. He's out for the year, and now they've got Rob Kelly and I think Thompson and P. Ryan and as a three-headed monster of running backs, and P. Ryan actually got nicked up week 1 of preseason. And the fact that they're bringing AP in, who the wise guys don't like at all, we don't like older running backs, I think it's a red flag that the Redskins, who could not run the ball last year, are not going to be able to run the ball this year.
What about the Giants? Any improvement there in terms of what's the Vegas over-under on the Giants right now?
The wise guys love the Giants. Vegas loves the Giants. I'm not as optimistic, but they pick up the left tackle Solder from the Patriots, so their O-line will be better. And the feeling is that last year the season just went awry week 5 when their top 3 wide receivers all got hurt. So we all know Beckham got hurt, but their other 2 wide receivers, Shepard and Marshall, also went out, and only Shepard came back over the course of the year. And Eli is not the quarterback that can survive with just journeyman wide receivers. He needs the elite receivers, and he knows how to get the ball to Beckham. And the team quit on McAdoo, their former head coach, or the feeling is that Eli Apple and some other defenders quit on him. So their season win opened 6.5. It is up currently to as high as 7.5. It'll be interesting to see, however, if they can succeed. Eli Manning is one of my bottom 5 quarterbacks in the NFL. Bottom 5 quarterbacks typically don't win.
Bottom 5 for Eli. That's surprisingly low for a debatable Hall of Famer, but he is getting up there in age.
And he never was all that good, and his yards per play the last 2 years have been lousy. He and Joe Flacco, another Super Bowl winner, are really right there with replacement level quarterbacks. It would be easy to find someone who was just about as good.
Well, that's what Baltimore, I guess, agrees with you on that, and that's why they took the quarterback early on. Wake up to both of them. Well, that's awesome. Thank you very much. A lot of great information from Steve Fezzik of pregame.com. You can see all of Steve's picks and a lot of other expert picks at pregame.com. They do a great job there, and it's an exciting time of year with football coming up. So we look forward to hopefully having you back at some point soon, and good luck with everything.
Thank you so much. Oakland Raiders, under 8 wins. Best bet.
All right. Thanks, Steve. Talk to you soon.
Thank you, Michael.